Hey,
Hey, this is James from All Hail Internal Combustion. Today we're doing piston rings and fitting them into the block and making sure they're the right size. We bought sealed power cast iron rings for this block. Street block. It's not a race car. We didn't want to buy anything special. You buy what you need according to what you're going to build, and if you're one of the ones that go to a machine shop, get advice from the machine shop on what you think you should be running. Turbos, blowers, special builds all require special rings. We're basically putting together a stockish bottom end for our truck. So we got sealed power cast rings. When you get your rings, they're going to come in some kind of a package. Hopefully they tell you what's supposed to be what, or you're going to have to figure that out according to the instructions. But sealed power, we got a paper that says second groove. Got one that says top groove. And our oil control rings, the skinnies, came in one pack that said oil. And the springies came in another pack that said oil. So when I open these up, I already did 7 of the pistons. I'm just going to take you guys through the last one. Now, this is our second ring, and I'm not too sure if you can see it or not, but there's the top right there. So this side faces up. On some rings, you're going to have a dot. There's going to be some kind of identifier, and usually if you look here, you'll see that there's a chamfer on the inside of the ring. Usually that chamfer will go down. Look for instructions with your rings. If you don't have any instructions with your rings, get all of the manufacturer so you don't goof something. And our top ring is just a plain, all 4 sides are exactly the same. So this goes in whatever orientation. There's no special markings on it. And I've already checked with sealed power. They're like, you can put these in however. There's no dulled edge or sharp edge. They're completely uniform all the way around. So now, let me move you guys over to the block and I'll show you how we check our gaps. Alright, so on a small block Ford, this is going to be cylinder number 8. And I even check my oil rings just to be on the safe side, because you never know who threw what in what box. And you could end up with the wrong size and either have way too much gap or not quite enough gap. And here I'm just using a piston to sit it down in there equally. Set that right there. And my rings so far have been coming out to 18 thousandths on the top ring, 20 thousandths on the second ring. They set a max of 25 on the oil rings. And this particular one is really freaking tight. So I'm going to have to address that. Pop the second one in there. Square it up. Check this one. And that one's loose. So this particular ring right here, I'm going to double check it. But it was sitting really, really, really tight. They said the max on these you can have is 25 thousandths gap. And the minimum you want on these particular rings was 16 thousandths. But I just don't like to run them that tight. So let me come in here with my feeler gauge again, 20 thousandths. And now that's way too tight, so I'm going to have to file that ring. Alright, so this oil control ring that was tight, I took a little hand file to it, lapped it a couple times, cleaned the edges off to get any burrs, and I got my clearance now. This is why I even check oil control rings. These things are mass produced on machines, and sometimes things just ain't right. But it would have sucked to have that thing get heated up at some point, bind up, and then season the bore. Let me grab the second ring, and we'll fit that. Alright, so here is my second ring. I've got my top, oriented at the right position. I'm going to go ahead and work this into the bore. Use my piston to square it up. Take my feeler gauge. On this one, I'm looking for 20. This one's tight too. I've had 3 of these so far that the second bore or the second ring I've had to file by hand. So just more of the same. So I know this one needs to be filed. And I am going to grab the top ring to make sure that it's cool. Go ahead and put this in there. Square it in the bore. Measure. And on this, I'm looking for 18. And I got it. So I know I need to clean that second ring up and take a little bit off of it and open that up. Alright, so I got my second ring filed. 20 floats right through it. And this is a file that I'm using. It's a little cheapy Harbor Freight thing that I've had kicking around for freaking years. You can get a piston ring filer that's a cranked a little happy handle or the electric one, but like, unless you're in a shop building engines all the time, you really don't need it. I never found a need to buy one. I'd rather buy car parts than more tools that I have no place to put. But now that all my ring gaps are good, we're going to go ahead and get this piston and the vise, and we'll put rings on it, and I'll show you about ring orientation. Okay, so we're about to put our rings on the pistons. Got a piston here and a vise loosely, so I'm not messing the skirts up. Now, the first thing we got is our springy ring. And I'm pretty sure this has like an actual name, but it's a springy ring. We're going to put the gap on this down at 6 o'clock. Drop my pen. Alright, so that is the front of the engine. We put springy ring down here. We got 2 more oil control rings that are going to go on here. We're going to put it at about 11 o'clock. And go ahead and work this on there. Alright, so we got our gap for the springy ring down there. And our other gap's right about here. I'm going to go ahead and move that around. Because roughly you want this to be the letter Y. So you got springy ring. That comes up here. Then you'll have an oil control ring gap and an oil control ring gap. Now, this is just general for normal rings. If you have anything special or exotic, check your paperwork, because they might want you to do things different. Gap at the bottom, gap over here at 11 o'clock. Next oil control ring I'm going to put on, it's going to be at about 1 o'clock. When you're putting these rings on, don't use extreme excessive force. You can bend these rings and make life not fun for a while. Now make sure everything moves nice and loose and happy. And there we go. So that takes care of these. Now as far as our second ring goes, we're going to make sure that we got our top sitting up. And what they tell you not to do is our wrist pin goes this way. These are considered thrust surfaces. Because every time it goes boom, this thing wants to rock around. You don't want to put your piston ring gaps at your thrust surfaces. There's words. I know there are. Sometimes I use them. And before I put these rings all on here, I took them and wiped them all down and cleaned them. I've got a piston ring expander because it only costs $5, so I bought it. And I've learned how to use it. So my second ring gap, I'm going to put over here at 3 o'clock. My top ring gap, since the orientation's the same either way, I'm going to take it and put it over here at 9 o'clock. And if you're using one of these ring expanders, put just enough pressure on there to get it to go over the piston. Cast iron rings will break. And then you're going to have to get one ring. That really sucks. So, oil control, 6 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and 1 o'clock. Bottom and top rings, 180 degrees away from each other. Like I said, consult your paperwork to make sure you're putting your ring gaps the way they want them. So, that'll take care of it for measuring our rings, setting up our pistons. I do have all 8 of them done now. So the next thing we're going to be focusing on is getting the pistons into the block and getting that all taken care of, because we've already got the crank in there. One thing that I did kind of screw up on with the block, I was like, oh, let me put the timing chain on and get all this, and it's all lubed up and it's nice and it's happy. I got 2 oil plugs missing back there because I messed the plugs up driving them in by using the wrong thing to drive them in with. So I got to pull my timing chain back off. If not, I'm going to forget. And this engine will probably grenade as soon as it gets started. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that off. But that ends the piston ring video. Thanks for watching. And we'll see y'all next time. All hail internal combustion. Like and subscribe.